So let me take a quick survey. How many of you live in the county and do not have access to broadband service right now? Wow, 2 of us. Okay, so the rest of you can leave. Ruth Ann and I are going to sit here and listen to this conversation because Gary's going to talk to us about an initiative that the Central Virginia Electric Co-op is doing. Gary Wood was appointed the cooperative's chief executive officer in 2008. In the previous 8 years, he served as vice president of engineering and operations and then as senior vice president at CVEC. Mr. Wood is a licensed professional engineer, earning his Bachelor of Science degree from the University of Virginia and his Master's of Business Administration from Auburn University. Mr. Wood has served on both the Nelson County School Board and Board of Supervisors. He represents the interest of Central Virginia Electric Cooperative by serving on the board of directors of the following organizations: the Blue Ridge Power Agency, Southeastern Federal Power Customers, Inc., and the Virginia, Maryland, and Delaware Association of Electric Cooperatives. He has also served on the board of directors of CVEC's wholly owned subsidiary, Central Virginia Services, Incorporated. Mr. Wood and his wife, Debbie Harvey, live in Nelson County. They have a son and a daughter. Please join me in welcoming Gary Wood.
Thank you. I appreciate those of you who do have good high-speed internet. I'm going to talk a little bit about most of the service area that Central Virginia Electric Co-op serves, which doesn't have that in a project we have going on. I've got a slideshow that I put together to go around mainly to ask for money, but I won't be doing that this morning. I'm going to step through parts of it pretty quickly and focus on the things I think that are important maybe to this group. I am with Central Virginia Electric Co-op, and let me turn my device on. Maybe that'll make it work. I'll skip through the quotes. By the way, I have this available. If anybody wants a copy of the slideshow afterwards, I have cards, and if you'll contact me, I'll be glad to send it along. But we're a not-for-profit electric utility owned by our members. We are a private company. Some people assume since we sell a public utility electricity that we're a public company, but the only way you can buy a share from Central Virginia is to be a member. We've been in business since 1937. In the mid-30s, as part of the New Deal, the government set aside zero-interest loans to provide incentive to build electric systems into rural areas, because at the time, Richmond had had electricity since 1880, and there was no electricity in large parts of Fluvanna County and a lot of Central Virginia, but a lot of the nation in terms of rural areas. Those loans went untapped by the companies who were in business at the time. So local farmers groups got together, went to Washington and said, if you have that money available, can we build our own electric systems? And that's the way REA was formed. After that, they created kind of a utility in a box, made it really restrictive in the way that electric co-ops build in terms of government oversight, the engineering design, the way we do our accounting, because they had to set it up so that farmers could start electric systems. So that was the response when the open market did not support building infrastructure in rural areas. There just wasn't enough money to be made. That's not a to take anything away from Dominion Energy and Appalachian Power and all of the other investor owns around the area. Their job is to make money for shareholders. And you can't do that out here. And we'll look at that same comment a little bit about infrastructure not supported by the open market in a little bit. I brag a little bit about the co-op here, talk a little bit about who all watches us. We have a board of directors made up of our members. They keep a watch on me, they hire me, and have fiduciary and policy roles. We're regulated by the State Corporation Commission as a monopoly. The state wants to make sure that we're charging fair rates. They'll also be looking closely at this project I'm talking about to make sure it doesn't impact electric rates in any way negative. Hopefully, if eventually it makes money, it'll be positive, but that'll be a long time down the road. And then our banker, the Rural Utilities Service, which is an agency from under the Department of Agriculture. They're our main lender. They keep a pretty close watch on us since we owe them $50, $70 million. I forget exactly what the number is. We refinanced, I think we're down to about $53 million we owe them. And they watch us closely and make sure we meet our financial requirements. And they're going to want to make sure that this project is feasible as well. They've actually already looked at it and agreed with the project technically, and we'll be applying soon for a $66 million loan for the first 3 years of construction on fiber from RUS. A little bit about the size of the company. We have 36,000 accounts spread across parts of 14 counties. We're actually about $90 million a year. If you look at the returns out of that, 2 to 4 million, you start figuring, okay, that's 2 to 4%, actually a little under that. That tells you, again, we're not for profit. If I did that as a for-profit company, I wouldn't be here as CEO after a couple of years. But our job is to provide the service, keep margins thin. We return those margins back to our customers. That's what keeps us not for profit. And we don't take any more than we need. We do have to cover our costs and show the banks that we have enough extra capital at the end that we're solvent. So they like to watch and make sure that is a positive number. We're not for loss either, not for profit, not for loss. We have 104 full-time employees, an office in Palmyra. We just opened a new building up here last year. I think we've got 25 or so folks who work out of there. We may be adding a few more with our new subsidiary work that I'm going to talk about. We also have a lot of contractors. So we're real active in the community. We're a local company, been around since 1937. Let's talk about the project. A couple of years ago, we decided we really needed to upgrade our communications system-wide. We have a lot of equipment in our substations that we are having some access to operate remotely today. We can operate reclosers remotely. We can get a little bit of information from our SCADA system, but we could get a lot more. We're limited on bandwidth. We talk to those stations by radio. Some of those radio links are not highly reliable. So we need better communications to our substations. If we do that, we can get the lights on a little quicker and improve reliability. We can do some controls during peak times to lower our power costs. We can also predict where some outages are with some information that we can get back if we can look at that. And then lastly, there's a requirement that's growing in our industry for physical security at a lot of points across the system. The physical security we have at our substations is not the strongest today. It would be nice to be able to get video back from substations. We can't do that over a radio link. So we need high-speed communications across our system at those 33 substations. Then going beyond that, we have downline reclosers, regulators, capacitor banks, lots of equipment that we use. Today it all runs remotely and without any communication back. We have no downline communication to devices, probably to this 800 to 1,000 pieces of equipment that are out there. Again, we can improve reliability. As an example, if we have a circuit breaker that opens up because a tree gets in the line and it's downline a ways, the way that the outage restoration works is our lineman will go by that circuit breaker, check to see that it's open, go downline, cut the tree off, clear it out. Then he's got to drive back to the circuit breaker to close it and test and see if that's all that's on the line and if it'll stay restored. Sometimes that drive back's 15 or 20 minutes when you're out in a rural area and around winding roads. So we could speed that restoration. Sometimes he gets back and closes it, and even though he's patrolled, he'll find there's another tree somewhere else that he hasn't seen. And he's got to go his 15 or 20 minutes back down the road and start looking again. So we can speed restoration. We can also do some things with voltage regulation that would help us control power costs. And our power costs are going down in terms of just the commodity of electricity. They are skyrocketing in terms of transmission costs and peaking costs. We have seen Dominion and APCO's transmission rates double in 5 and 7 years, fully double. And they're continuing to go up. Now, part of that is a need for transmission investment, but then our response needs to be, how do we manage that? How do we keep from just passing that along? In order to do that, we have to have high-speed communications. Ultimately, we need high-speed communications all the way out to the meters. Today, we can read all of our meters remotely, but we read them once a day. We'd like to read those every hour. Some would like to read every 5 minutes. The long-term goal would be to have two-way communication to that meter and from that meter inside the home. One of the growing technologies that we're seeing in our field is the use of batteries. Battery costs have come down dramatically the last couple of years, probably dropped in half each of the last 2 years, and are dropping the way that solar equipment costs dropped over the last 6 or 7 years, which has driven solar from about 16 or 18 cents a kilowatt hour down to about 4 cents a kilowatt hour and under that you can make electricity out of solar panels with. Battery prices are starting to drop the same way. It would not surprise me that within 5 years we'll see batteries with every solar installation. We'll also see batteries, more batteries in electric cars. You've seen a lot of the large car manufacturers have talked about going to all electric cars. And there'll be batteries in homes just as a standalone for reliability, just like some people use generators now. If they're looking for short periods of backup, they may be using batteries, particularly if their electric company provides them an incentive to let them discharge those batteries at peak times. So if we have batteries around our system and we have high-speed communications, and during those peak hours we can say now is the time when we need that electricity back, and we discharge it into the system, there's value we can provide the homeowner, and it lowers everybody's rates. But to do that, we have to have high-speed communications. Electric prices change every 5 minutes in the wholesale market. We can't put out a note on the radio. We can't get an ad in the newspaper. We've got to have communications right then. We can also, in using smart home technology, eventually talk to water heaters, dryers, lots of other things, and cycle things off and on a little bit to help control costs during those few peak hours of the year. Our transmission peak is set on 1 hour, the one highest hour of the year. It's hard to predict the exact hour, but it's not every hour we need to control. We know the times when those peaks occur. The capacity peak, which is another piece of our rates, is 5 peak hours a year. So we don't have to control every hour all year round, but we have to have high-speed communication to be able to talk. So we need high-speed communication. That's what started this. We started looking around for how to do it. We have asked for years for somebody to come on our system and build a high-speed internet system that would allow us to have communications. We offered free pole attachments. We wouldn't charge any rent. If someone would provide high-speed access to every member within 5 years, we had no takers. So last year we did a feasibility study to see if it was possible really to put fiber in, which I really assumed would be too expensive. It turned out it's marginally feasible, marginally. And we're going to do some other things to make it less marginal. So we've started a project. We've got a 5-year project to build out fiber to every home, every one of the 36,000 meters across parts of 14 counties. Our board of directors approved the first year. And that's because you'll see it has some risk to it. It is marginally feasible right now. My job in the first year is to show that our projections for the cost of that construction, that we can come in under those costs, and to show that we can bring in more revenue than what showed up in the model. We will make the offer at every meter to have this service. We've got about 3,500 miles of fiber to build, 600 or 800 miles a year. That's really, really fast. Our co-op typically will spend $12 to $15 million rebuilding power lines in a year, and to do that, we'll end up building 50 to 75 miles in a year of power line. We're talking about 600 or 800 miles, so it's much faster. It's a huge financial commitment, $110 million to build fiber across the system, $20 to $24 million spend a year. So we'll be building it overhead where we have overhead lines, underground where we have underground lines. The state of Virginia does not allow an electric co-op to sell you anything but electricity. We cannot sell you internet service. The state of Virginia allows an electric co-op to own a subsidiary that can do any legal business in the state of Virginia. So we're going to start a subsidiary and go in the internet business. We'll be leasing the fiber to them, but that's why you have to buy through our subsidiary and not directly from us. It also gives us a chance to show arm's length transactions between the co-op and the subsidiary and make it a little clearer to follow the money and make sure it's not impacting electric rates. We will be adding 15 to 20 miles a week. We'll have between 75, maybe as many as 150 contractors on a line when we're working at this. We'll start at the substation, work one circuit all the way out to the end. All of the taps go by all the homes, make it available, turn around, work the substation circuit out in the other direction. We'll do that until we finish. Most of our substations have 3 or 4 circuits. When we finish the substation, we'll go to the next one. We'll choose those substations by the lowest cost to serve areas. That's because it takes to year 11 to reach a simple break even. We'll be losing money the first 6 years. If we have no outside subsidy, year 7 we have cash flow positive just for the year. By year 11 we've paid off those losses in the first 6 years and we have $1. If you want to know why Comcast and Verizon and CenturyLink and folks don't come and do this, they cannot go to their board and say, give me $100 million and in year 11 I'll give you $1 of profit. That's not their role. That's not what they're meant to do. And I understand that. They have a different role. We're not for profit. Our job is service. Our job is not necessarily to crank out money for the shareholders because that's just not our business model. The business plan that we have uses pretty conservative projections. We're pretty comfortable that we can make this work. And we'll talk about some things we're going to do we're going to push this down, way down, with some outside support that we're getting in. Here's what the business model is based on. $49.99 for 100 megabit per second service, $79.99 for gigabit service, voice service that will be unlimited local and long distance for $29.99. We're going to pursue some federal funds that require us to offer voice service. That's the reason we'll offer it. We don't want to be in the telephone business, but we have to offer that service to get the money. We'll offer the service. We'll also have a router that has a wireless, the optical modem has a wireless router built in, and we'll offer that to be used as a router at your home for $5. We will offer to waive the small installation fee if you sign up when we first come through. Here's Fluvanna County, and all those different color lines are different circuits out of substations. So we have, I think it's about 5 or 6 substations that feed parts of Fluvanna County. We'll be working each one of those one at a time. We'll go to the ones, again, across our system that are the lowest cost to serve first. We'll jump in and work out the whole substation. If you want to know where Fluvanna had electricity in 1937, look for the places where there are no colored lines. Down here, Fork Union area, up in this area a little bit. Other than that, that's how we got assigned the service territory. We're talking about another $25 million investment in Fluvanna County for Central Virginia Electric Co-op. We pay taxes on that. We pay taxes on all of our lines and poles and wire the same way that we pay taxes on our buildings and land. In Fluvanna County, I looked up yesterday, I think we've got about $45 million in total property. $2 million of that's in trucks. Those are taxed at a little bit different rate. The rest of it's taxed at the real estate rate. So we'll be adding another $25 million to the tax base, and we'll be serving about 8,900 accounts, or we have that many electric accounts. We'll make the service available to that many folks in Fluvanna County. We're looking for ways to help cut the costs. As I said, we've got a goal of about 20-25% outside revenue to offset that $100 million. I feel comfortable we're going to hit that goal overall. And we're talking to people at all the different levels. I'll talk about some of those incentives if you want later, but I want to leave time for questions, and I know we have other things to do. So this is a good quote I like from a guy who knew a little something about electricity. Opportunities missed by people, it's just like in overalls looks like work. This is a huge project with a lot of work, but it's a great opportunity for the co-op. So we're looking forward to it. We're excited about it. We understand the need for broadband. By building the fiber a little quicker, instead of just waiting till our needs would support it. I talked about all the co-op needs. If we just built it based on the electric system needs, it's probably a 20, 25-year build. But we know the need for broadband. So we're going to speed it up, sell the internet service so that we also have the capacity to have high-speed communication for the electric system. I'll be glad to take any questions. I didn't check my time. Do I need to get out of here?
You're great.
Okay.
Gary, the rate case that's going on now, it's been published in the paper?
Yes,
I know there's no dollars published with that, but that's not tied to this project?
it is not at all. It's not tied to the solar project. And the State Corporation Commission will be looking at that closely. Let me go back. Our margins, the $2 to $4 million, the last couple of years, that has been getting squeezed. So we're closer to the $2 million side. Our bankers require that we have a minimum of the ability to pay our mortgage plus 25% extra at year end. It's a ratio they look at as an absolute minimum. We have been running closer and closer to that minimum ratio. So the rate case is really to increase margins so that our bankers are a little more comfortable with our financial position. Those margins will be returned back to the members, but we need more margins because we've run thin on that. What's contributed to those margins eroding is some investment we've made for reliability. We added about $1 million a year in right-of-way clearing every year a couple of years ago. We've also invested several $1 million in upgrades to our system for reliability. We have some more planned for that. And then the regular costs, as you're familiar with the county government, we have insurance that goes up every year. We have a number of costs of just doing business with our outside vendors. The contractors we use are charging more every year and eating into that margin little by little. So we have the same number of sales we had in 2009. Any of you in business? If you like growth, which most businesses do, that's where you get new money. If you're selling the same thing that you were in 2009, you've had to deal with some non-growing pains, and that's a little bit of what we're dealing with. But thanks for asking.
Yeah, folks, when you ask a question, please stand up. We've got a mic that'll follow around. So, Doug, I have a question for you. You mentioned those margins would be if you did not get any subsidies. What do you mean by subsidies?
Well, we're looking outside at state, federal, and local levels. A good example, and one that you've seen announced, is we pursued a grant in Appomattox County for the Appomattox substation. That's about a $4 million bill just out of that substation. And the Tobacco Commission awarded us a grant. So that's helped drive the cost down there. Last night, Appomattox County Economic Development Authority voted to also enter an agreement with us to return essentially the first 5 years of taxes to us, those taxes that we'll pay. After we pay the taxes, they will come back to us through the subsidiary. That helps that first few years when it's such a sensitive new business. We're also looking at other ways we can get money, whether it's, again, federal, state, local. We're looking at some in-kind donations from some counties. So we're being very creative and willing to look for however we can get money in-kind donations that help drives that capital cost down or helps us with revenues the first few years. Mm-hmm.
You mentioned that you're going to serve the areas first, which ones you're serving first. I'm sure you're going to get lots of calls saying, when are you coming to my neighborhood? What is that schedule going to be public, or how is that going to be handled?
We will announce the first year probably by June. We know that we're going to Appomattox first because that has been the lowest cost to serve since we got that money. We are looking, and part of it is to see what other forms of outside revenue come in, because that can help drive some of that decision. So we'll probably announce it year to year because other things can impact it during that year. We're pursuing another grant right now that there's an application we'll be putting in 2 weeks for a grant that would impact a couple of our substations down south of James also. We'll know about that grant in October. If that comes in, that'll lower those costs. If not, those areas will probably go out a couple of years before we build them.
I'm sure that the areas that have no broadband at all would be ideal to start, but for Fluvanna County residents that'll be watching this, what is our schedule, do you think? Is there any projection on that yet?
I do not have a specific schedule for Fluvanna. Logically, it makes sense to go to the place where there's absolutely no internet, but that tends to be in higher cost to serve and lower density areas. And if you remember, I showed the 11 years to payback. That's going to the most profitable areas first. If you switch that around and go to the lease, that 11 years goes out to 15 and 17, and my board of directors can't take that type of risk, and the bankers are going to start having concerns with it. So we have to build in the areas it's lowest cost to serve. I will say that a lot of the grants and money that's coming from outside that's available is for unserved areas. The area we're going into in Appomattox has a large portion of that's unserved now. So if those types of opportunities come up, we'll be in those areas first. But if we don't have that, we'll be looking at the lowest cost to serve. Doesn't necessarily mean highest density. Underground lines are more expensive to build than overhead. Rocky areas or really swampy areas are tougher to build in if we have large portions of them. So there are a number of factors that come into deciding what the lowest cost to serve is.
Thank you.
I understand that the state of Virginia has some programs to support or help people, encourage them to go solar. Is your group working on any of that?
Solar, we're very excited about solar. Central Virginia, we have the most per capita solar systems that our members have or our customers have of any electric utility in the state. We've already got almost 200 members out of our 36,000 have solar panels on their homes. In addition to that, we've got 10 megawatts of solar, part of it here in Fluvanna County and part down near Shannon Hill that we brought online. We're making available for community solar. So our members can buy solar from a larger installation if it doesn't work for them to put solar on their homes. In addition to that, we offer net metering and the other things that the state allows under state regulations, and we work closely with folks who are looking to put solar in. As a not-for-profit, we own very little in terms of generation plants. So if somebody comes in and wants to provide their own electricity instead of buy some from us, we just buy less and it's fine with us. We don't have a preference whether you provide portions of your electricity or we provide it. We do still charge solar members for the use of our wires if they're using it to get other electricity back and forth. But in general, I think you'll find Central Virginia is pretty open to solar opportunities for our members.
Do you have any setup where you can help individual homeowners get solar?
We do not offer any like consulting toward that. We can give you a list of contractors that we know are good contractors in the area, and if a homeowner wants that list, we can talk to them about that. Then we'll be glad to work with them as far as the net metering and the way that comes on the system so that it's interconnected properly and will work well for them.
Thank you.
I have one more question. Can you talk a little bit about the voice over IP? Is that going to be linked to the E911 system or?
Yes. So your phone numbers will be portable locally. We'll have the E911 system will work. It'll look just like a local phone system, except it'll be voice over IP. It has some nice features in being able to do some things online and with apps that you can see phone calls and block numbers and do lots of things. So it gives you all the features pretty much that you can get with other types of phone service. You can get voicemail converted to text and sent to you by text or email. You can do lots of things. So it's a nice system that we'll have more information on as we roll that out.
Any other questions?
You mentioned you're nonprofit, and I understand that, but your service provider, your sub, is going to be a for-profit business.
It is. We expect that, well, there's two reasons. First of all, if there's risk in this, and there is when we borrow $100 million, the risk is going to be handled by the members, the 36,000. They're the ones who are standing behind that loan. Any profits made from the investment of that $100 million, I believe should come back to those 36,000 people who are taking that risk. We'll be building some off system, not a lot, but there are areas in some counties where we run by homes that are on other providers, electric providers. If we're within a few hundred or 1,000 feet, we'll offer connections to them. Again, those profits will go back then to co-op members as the subsidiary passes that back. So, yes. Mm-hmm.
Any other questions?
It'll take a while to get to those profits, though.
Have other rural cooperatives embarked on this rural broadband adventure, and what kind of success have they had?
That's a great question. I'd love to take credit for this being an amazing new idea, but we're copycats. There are about 24 co-ops in the country today that already have projects underway. There are 2 others in the state of Virginia. Some of them have taken a little different approach. Several nationwide have taken the approach that we are moving very fast. Probably one of the best known ones is in Missouri. It's a CO-MO Electric Co-op. They finished their 5-year build out last year. There's one up in Michigan. There's one in Indiana. There's one in New Mexico, a couple in Tennessee, one in Georgia, one in South Carolina. So we've talked to a lot of those folks and tried to learn lessons that they've already learned and avoid making the same mistakes and take the best practices from all of those. But yes, there are several others, and generally it's gone very well. I think the stories we heard where they haven't gone well have been some of them who've taken a little different approach. If you build a middle mile network, it's harder to make it work. If you just build a fiber backbone and you wait for someone else to come and sell the services off of it, because if there's not a lot of incentive to get out and sell those services, the middle mile sits there. And that cost is carried by the ratepayers, and then the service isn't expanded sometimes as quickly. So we believe we have a model that will work based on it working in a number of other locations.
Thank you so much.
All right.